Hello, let me try that again. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Buddies Book Buddies podcast. I'm Buddy Gott, the host of the show, who sometimes pronounces the show correctly. Today, my guest on Buddies Book Buddies is author Joe Chianakas. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you so much for having me, buddy. I'm really excited to be here and I appreciate the invitation.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure indeed. And you are at a very exciting time right now because I know you have a new novel that's about to release towards the end of August called Pride and Persistence, which is the second book in your Unveiling Aiden series. Did I get that all right?
Yeah, very good. It's two from this moment that we're recording, 2 weeks from today exactly is the
Oh.
release. So I'm really in high gear, both in terms of excitement and nervousness. It really is exciting to get the second book, the sequel to I last year dropped the first book in the series in August called Singlets and Secrets, and before then it had been 5 or 6 years since I released a book, due to the state of the world and everything, finding an agent, finding a publisher and all that stuff. So the fact that it's snowballing and I get to do the second, literally a year later, it feels really good.
Oh, I bet it feels fantastic. And like you said, I'm sure there's, kind of a mixture of, excitement, but then nervousness as well. And I think that's the case for any artist. I hear that with musician friends of mine who have done hundreds of shows. They say they still experience, nervousness sometimes before doing a performance or releasing something new. And I guess that's
hmm
always there.
Confidence is not an elimination of insecurity. It is simply knowing that what you have is worth pushing through your insecurities to get it out to the world. That's how I view it.
I love that. That's fantastic. That's something I want to keep in mind for myself as I do my
Yeah,
marketing and things.
absolutely.
Well, you mentioned the first book, which you released last August, which was Singlets and Secrets. Can you tell my audience what that's all about?
Yeah, so Singlets and Secrets, the very first book, it's Aiden's journey. He's a queer teenager who's been bullied. He turns to the wrestling team to try to get tough. He's not sure where to go, but he wants to get tough. Unfortunately, and this is true for a lot of sometimes traditionally masculine sports, if you will, but he encounters some homophobia, not just some, but he encounters a pretty terrible amount of homophobia, particularly from the main coach, and that's all
Oh,
part of the
wow.
story as it moves forward. But fortunately, the JV wrestling captain Mateo stands up for Aiden, defends him against some of the haters, and the story starts off with Aiden falling hopelessly in love with this boy. But Aiden hasn't come out himself. He hasn't come to terms with who he is. The whole idea behind the series title of Unveiling Aiden, that this is a journey of self-discovery, that it doesn't happen overnight. You don't go to, I mean, maybe some people fall asleep one night thinking, I'm finally ready to tell my truth, and wake up the next day and they go for it. But this is a long process. And I really wanted to encompass that in the series. But anyway, so he becomes friends with the wrestling captain, and at first, or it's one part love story. It's a will they, won't they? Is this Mateo is the captain? Does he even go that way? That sort of story. And so we have a fun relationship drama there, but it's framed in a higher stakes Karate Kid like universe.
Oh, I love that.
So when Aiden decides to eventually quit the wrestling team, it's not going to take very long, all right? He finds a mentor, a surprising mentor, in his English teacher, Lloyd Samuels, who also happens to be a karate black belt. And Mr. Samuels opens up a martial arts club for outsiders like Aiden, anyone who never fit in with a traditional sports program or just didn't find their voice or their spot in high school. I was a high school teacher for 10 years. So all of this is actually kind of comes from that experience. But he opens up this club, and Mr. Samuels is a straight man, right? But he's trying to understand and embrace differences. He sees the hate in this town. It's a town that is kind of following the don't say gay kind of policies and
Oh,
rules.
okay.
So that's where all of these influences come from. And so I get to use a martial arts drama and a love story to try to paint a picture of love conquering hate in a school full of intolerance. And that is the basic premise. Of course, as it goes, now since I've already told you Aiden falls for Mateo, who's the wrestling captain, well, my big moment when I went into writing it, and I don't mind semi spoiling this because you got
Hmm.
to get to the end to know what's actually going to happen anyway. But I like to phrase it this way: small minds have big egos. The wrestling team's going to challenge these new martial artists to a winner takes all high stakes competition. And for our main event, It's Aiden versus Mateo. How do you fight the boy of your dreams? How do you fight your
Wow.
first love? And how is that going to work out?
Yeah,
So
as if
that is the first
relationships
book.
aren't difficult enough, right?
Right,
And,
right.
and
And we're going to go
especially
back and
for
forth.
a teenage gay character. And
Mhm.
wow. And what I think is fascinating there is I know just by reading up a little on you that and what you just said too, you've used a lot of your own experiences in here with being a teacher for so long, and then you have been practicing martial arts for quite a while yourself, haven't you?
Yes. And so it's almost as if I try to take a little when I teach writing classes, I try to look at what's the perspective you're going to share, what's the point of view you're going to share, and oftentimes I look at what are my experiences or what can I research. Well, yeah, obviously I was a queer teenager growing up. I too was closeted for a long, long time, trying to figure out how to find that voice and communicate who I was. I turned to martial arts for confidence and strength, became a black belt, became a high school English teacher, opened up a martial arts club at the high school I was teaching, and ran that for
Wow.
10 years. It still exists. I passed the torch when I moved along, but one of my black belts actually runs the program now.
Oh,
So I
that's
had all
really
these
cool.
real life experiences to take ideas and story plot lines and all the drama and stuff and put it into this and try to make it very real. And that's the good feedback I'm getting, that people they're like, wow, the fighting scenes there, it makes sense to me. I've never seen one described in a way that made sense. And I was like, yes, because I'm a martial artist. I'm a writer and a martial artist, not just a writer researching karate moves. So it works out, I think, I hope to be the best story it can possibly be, at least the best story I can possibly tell.
Right. Well, I think that's all fantastic. And like I said earlier, I love the combination of things that you have there. And you had mentioned earlier, this sort of similarity to like the world of the Karate Kid. And what I think is really neat, I had seen it on your website, is that you have a blurb from the one of the co-creators of Cobra Kai, John Hurwitz. And I think that's so awesome. If you don't mind, I'm just going to share what that is. It's
Please, thank you.
Sure. This LGBTQ martial arts story is equal parts fresh, heartfelt, entertaining, and important. That
Yes.
had to have you flying high because I know you're a fan of like Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, and just to I think it's just a really cool thing there.
Yeah, I wanted to go into the story. I mean, my dream, I mean, I even had a pin post on one of my pages for a long time saying, my dream is that, and I tagged him, that John Hurwitz will blurb my book. I think John is such a creative writer. He is a genius at character development. And I'm not, obviously I got the blurb. I don't need to keep complimenting, right? But I mean, he is. So his stories traditionally have been more comedic. So you wouldn't necessarily think, oh my gosh, this guy's a genius. He wrote the Harold and Kumar series. He
Mhm.
wrote American Pie Reunion, Blockers with John Cena, Obliterated, the series on Netflix. He's got an amazing resume. And when you get into Cobra Kai, you see good characters who've turned bad, bad characters who've turned good, and just a ton of gray among everyone. And that is the storytelling that I love, where we can kind of see ourselves both in villains and in heroes. So I praise John for his amazing creativity, and I want to learn. I think at any age and at any success in life, I want mentors. I want to look up to people, and I want to be inspired. That's what keeps me going. But I
Yeah,
was
it's
also
important to
very
keep learning
honest.
like that. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yes, right. Like it's when I'm not inspired is, I mean, the obvious, right? I don't want to write. I don't want to be creative. So I need to constantly consume things that inspire me too. But I was also very honest with John, and I took a risk and kind of sent this message out there that's like, Cobra Kai doesn't have the best LGBTQ representation. It's a missed opportunity from someone like, from my perspective. And now I'm a huge fan of the show, 100% a huge fan of the show. But you've got so many fighters, so many young adult athletes, not a single queer one, not a single one. There's a side character, but not a main character. And so
Right.
I told John, I'm going to do what you're doing for the Karate Kid fandom, but I want to do it for the LGBTQ community because every single one of us deserves to be represented. I don't want a side character who's the queer hero that gets saved by a straight dude or something. I want the queer heroes on top and winning these tournaments, winning some of the challenges, and just being celebrated for that success. I was grateful that John is like-minded and appreciated the perspective and was willing to write that blurb and acknowledge it. So the fact that he did that, I think, is just mind-blowing on multiple levels for me.
Oh yeah, I like I said, I just think that's wonderful, and I think it's wonderful what you've done too in terms of like you said, you wanted to have that representation there because very often, and everybody has seen it in the worlds of pop culture, whether it's in television, movies, or books. A lot of times, your LGBTQ plus character might be there for comedic relief or be a side character. So to have like this, lead character who is not only, the lead in a romance story, but also, a coming of age, and also, like you said, with fighting. I mean, it's this is not Jack from Will and Grace. This is this. I'm not putting that character down because absolutely fantastic character, but I think you know what I mean. This is a different sort of character
Yeah.
for
And
readers
what
to
if
enjoy.
Jack as a teenager took karate lessons and could defend himself confidently? I mean, I want effeminate queer characters who are also able to kick butt when they need to. I
Yeah,
mean, that's part
exactly.
of the story. Like Aiden even there's a great scene, and I feel like a lot of young queer people can probably relate to this, but there's this great scene where after he has finally figured himself out and he's communicating that to others, this question comes back. I even have one of the chapters titled this way. I like to give my chapters little names too, but it's just called Am I Obvious? After going through all of this, a friend makes a comment that's like, everyone knew all along. I mean, and but the way that feels, like I can laugh about it as an adult looking back, but the
Hmm.
way it feels in that moment as a young insecure teenager, it just freaking crushes you to be like,
I'm sure.
you mean I struggled with this all along and everyone around me already knew, already had it figured out, and there was this is one of the themes that I wanted to address as well.
Which I think is wonderful because, I don't know how old you are, and you can certainly keep that to yourself. But I know that, probably I would guess when you were the age of Aiden, there weren't a lot of books or movies or TV out there that had characters like this in a lead
Right.
role, someone that maybe you could relate to, you know, while you were reading or watching
Yeah.
things. So I think it's great that you're doing that for audiences.
I'm 45. Yeah. So in the 90s, when I was a teenager, yeah, I don't remember. Hey, you know what? Okay, so we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but the
Hmm.
original Quantum Leap had gay storylines, and those were some of my favorite episodes. That
Yes.
even then, Dr. Sam Beckett was saving, he was fighting the good fight for the underdog, for the underrepresented, and it's one of the reasons why my heart is so close to that show. And so when I saw that your other podcast did an episode, and I love how much they kept that theme of including non-binary
Yeah.
representation
Yeah.
and just continuing with the themes and the storylines there. Anyway, all that to say is, yeah, it was so little that if one episode of a TV show had a moment where there was a queer storyline or a character, I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, I was just so drawn to it. And now we have a lot more. But yeah, it's kind of funny when you said it that way. What popped in my mind is I used to go when I had my driver's license, I would browse Family Video or Blockbuster, and I'd
Mhm.
walk around the video store, and the only time I ever saw any sort of queer representation was direct to video releases. And so I
Right.
would
Yeah.
try one of those there here and there, but they were B movies, at best, and usually low quality production. And so it nobody should have to search through
No.
content to try to find a story that
Yeah, you
connects to
shouldn't.
them. And that's why I'm glad the world is a little bit better
Yeah,
now
like
than
you
it
said,
was
there's a
then.
lot more of that in the mainstream. Maybe not as much as still there should be, but it does keep growing and growing, and it's not to get too far into the real world or down like political roads, but you have like this very inspirational person in like someone like Pete Buttigieg,
Hmm.
who was out there and is an inspiration to so many people, and I think things just keep changing and changing in a positive way with people like
Agreed,
him.
100%. And we need positive leaders, and that's part of what the next book really tackles. Pride and Persistence just is hitting at the perfect time because over the summer we saw gender controversies in the Olympics.
Yes.
This last year or two, we've seen drag bans being passed. We've literally had don't say gay discussions in certain states. I'm trying to take that and sort of, on one hand, oh gosh, if we go that route, here's what's going to happen to these kids who are just finding their voices, just figuring out who they are. And now you want to go and tell them they can't talk about it. They can't
Right.
share their pronouns in school,
Yeah.
or they can't.
It's
I mean,
crazy.
that's what crushes me. So I wanted to say absolutely, or we are not going backward to that. But the biggest thing, and again, I don't want to be political on your show either, but like I think most people who maybe think similarly to me felt a lot of doom and gloom
Yeah.
until recently.
Right.
And when I started to feel optimistic once again, it made me think of Pride and Persistence, because without giving it away, there's a surprising twist and a leader coming in book 2 to be another champion. These kids who are fighting for themselves are actually going to inspire something significant in their community. And sometimes you need an enthusiastic leader who's going to take that torch and fight for you. And
Absolutely.
that's why I'm so excited to get Pride and Persistence out there, because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's almost modeling what's going on in real time. And so when you get to the end, yeah, there's some obstacles, there's still some issues to get over, but I've got a big dose of optimism and a big old kick to hate that hopefully will knock it out and take it down in our story, So I'm
Oh,
really excited about that.
oh, that's very exciting. And I'm going to step back into the political thing a little bit. You were talking about how this the new book seems to mirror some things that are going on in the world. When you were talking about the first book and the straight teacher helping out a student, it made me think of what's been in the news recently with the vice presidential candidate. Why am I drawing a blank on his name right
Tim
now?
Walls,
Yeah,
right?
thank you very
And
much, Tim Walls. My gosh, I've just
no, it's
been.
only been a week. I mean,
Yeah.
so it's okay. We got to say his
but
name.
but
Let's
but
get
I
it out there.
remember
Tim
seeing
Walls.
how he had been very helpful to, I think it was a student or someone who had been on a team that he was coaching, and he helped with the LGBTQ plus community, I guess, in his school or his
Yeah.
community, and so a
Buddy,
little
when I
more
heard the
mirroring
story,
there.
yeah, when I heard that story, it affected me so much I almost broke down. And I want people who don't understand what it's like to be a queer kid to just hear what you just said. Tim Walls, no matter what you think of his politics, all right, but Tim Walls was a high school history teacher and football coach, a straight white football coach who
Right.
said, I'm opening up a GSA to protect these kids and give them a place of community. If
Yeah.
everybody was like that, oh my, I mean, to me, that is so inspiring and just so amazing. Because again, my book deals with some traditional sports that often include toxic masculinity and people who wouldn't do things like that. It doesn't have to be that way. You can still be as tough and as, I don't know, hit
Right.
people as hard as you want and like care about others
Yeah,
at the same time.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that story with Walls, that was just so wonderful to hear. My wife Lisa, my wife Lisa.
Yes.
I'll just tell you, folks. The reason I am talking to Joe here is I first became aware of him because he is also a teacher. He's a professor, and my wife Lisa was in one of his courses one of his classes earlier this year, and. I'm so glad that happened. A, because she loved it and she learned from you, and B,
Wonderful.
because we are talking right now about these things.
I appreciate sharing that. I don't know if I may not have told you or Lisa this. So I'll say it here. Why not? But so this was a graduate level writing course at Southern New Hampshire University in their Masters of Fine Arts program. And it was the first graduate course I've ever taught. So
Ah.
to me, I didn't want to tell any student that. That class kicked my butt. I have never worked so hard in terms of grading your feedback. So the fact that Lisa said such kind things, that really meant a lot to me too, because I've taught all ages, all levels. I never had a class full of 20 plus adult creative writers just as hungry as I am to get stuff out there and to publish and do work. And so when they wanted that, oh, it was a wonderful experience, but it
Oh, it
definitely
sounds
kicked my
like it.
butt. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like I know it was a lot of work, but that's just got to feel so good. I know just from me when I get talking with other writers, it's so wonderful to share those kinds of things because you can't do that with everybody,
Right.
and then to be involved in like helping people, develop their stories and their craft. That's yeah, it's got to be such a high for you.
It's really cool. I mean, I love doing it. I do it very sparingly. I mean, that's the only class so far I've taught this year. I've had to turn the others down. I've been plenty of offers, which is wonderful. And like maybe next year, I've got a book that I got to promote here. So and work on, and I've
And I
got the
was going to
series to finish.
comment on
So
that, saying, you have in a short period of time. I realize you said that you took a break between books for a while, but
yeah,
you have released several books since I think it was a 2016 your first release.
yeah, I think so. 2015 or 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but my first one was a horror series titled Rabbit in Red, and I still love Rabbit in Red, and there might be a fourth Rabbit in Red coming, but it was a trilogy that I just again we share. I think we have more in common than I ever realized, but I am a super fan, especially of 80s and 90s horror films. And I wanted to write my own story that was sort of like a Ready Player One meets Willy Wonka-like adventure
Oh,
through
nice. I
horror.
love that.
Yeah, and so Rabbit in Red was my celebration of that culture. And here's something for your listeners, all right. Who knows what Rabbit in Red references in terms of classic horror? It references a major movie franchise, but it's a really sort of deep cut reference. So I'll throw that out there for listeners to go Google. But anyway, Rabbit in Red. So originally,
You can tell me after the show.
sure. Originally, my title was Fright Fest.
Oh, nice. I
Because you
like
always
that
have like a
too.
working title, and I just wanted to, again, this is popcorn entertainment. Rabbit and Red is fun horror. I just wanted to have a good time writing, and yeah, so that I really enjoyed that series. But there was a day I was watching one of my favorite horror films, and there's just this little tiny seed where they mention something titled Rabbit and Red. And what's funny is
Hmm.
every Halloween season, someone will watch this movie and they'll take a screenshot of it and they'll send it to me like, Joe, did you know this? The title of your book is in this 1978 movie? Yes, yes, I
Oh,
knew.
interesting.
So there you go.
I can
Narrow it
think of
down a little
one
bit.
really popular one from 78, but again, I'm not going to say
I
right
may have
now.
already given it away in some, yes, but it's a
There
good one.
there may have been one or two sequels to this,
Yes,
or
yes,
12 or
like
13 sequels to this.
yeah, a trilogy, a revamped trilogy that just came out that I had hoped so badly would somehow have an actual copy of my book somewhere in the movie, but they never did. So
Those
whatever.
weren't bad, by the way. Those recent ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually there's a lot of people. Yeah, well, I could believe me. I actually really love the second. If I think we're talking about the same one, and a lot of people don't, but I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Well, we'll maybe we'll reveal that at the end of this
Yeah,
episode.
why not? Keep
Yeah.
listening. We'll give it
Yeah,
away
keep
at the end.
listening.
There you
But I
go.
do want to mention the books in that trilogy because I love the titles of them. Oh, and I gotta say, folks, check them out online because the covers are awesome. I had seen them, and they're really kind of twisted looking, Joe. If you hope you don't take offense to that, but really
No.
kind of creepy.
I'm so glad you said it. Yeah, look at Rabbit in Red book.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things called Rabbit in Red that I've realized, bands and podcasts. I mean, it's crazy how many references there are to it. So you have to search for Rabbit in Red novel or Rabbit in Red book. But yes, the story that I like though is that wasn't the original cover. The original cover was fine. I don't mean to insult the publisher's cover, but someone who didn't read my book and was hired to do the cover art, put something together that was okay. And that got annoyed with me when I kept asking for more and like, I don't know, how about this? And then I remember actually my first sort of annoying moment as working with a publisher was being told this is the last revision I'm doing. So I was like, okay. Anyway, I didn't really love the original cover, if I can be honest. And I had a reader who happened to be, of all things, a student at the college where I teach now locally. He is a graduate of their art program at Illinois Central College, and he was just a genuine reader and a fan. His name's Cameron Johnson. So shout out to Cameron. He read the book, emailed me, Joe, had a vision while reading this book, and this was the vision that I had. And so you've seen the cover, and yes, it's
Yeah.
dark, it's awesome. I can't love it enough. It's perfect. I said how much because I'm buying it. We're making this the cover, and then
Wow.
he went on and did book 2 and book 3.
That's
We did, and it
fantastic.
was awesome. Yeah,
What an
and now
amazing.
he's doing like comics for all the major publishers, so it's really cool. He's doing art for all the
Wow.
major comic publishers.
Oh,
I think
that's
he just
great.
did
Yeah, all
like a
three covers.
TMNT one or
Well, all
something.
three
So
covers are great, and the first one's Rabbit in Red. Then is it Burn the Rabbit after that,
yep.
and then Bury the Rabbit.
Yep. So
Fantastic.
yeah, I had a follow the rabbit, burn the rabbit, bury the rabbit sort of theme. I promise folks no rabbits actually get harmed or hurt in the story, but
Well, that's good. That's
so
good.
no one's actually getting burned. Rabbit in Red is the name of I took the name to make it my fictional Hollywood studio name. So they go to Rabbit in Red Studios
Oh, I love that.
where they make these films, and that's where these young adults who love horror they get to see everything come to life, but unfortunately it goes a little too far for them, and it's really about whether or not they know enough about the movies to survive it in real life and to figure out what's a twist and what's a game and what's real, that sort of thing.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this, and I actually had the same question too about the Unveiling Aiden series. Is both obviously you have a series first with the Rabbit in Red, and then a series now with Aiden. And when you started both of these out, did you immediately from the get go envision them as series, or were they standalones?
No, I'm going to tell you something I don't think I've ever put on record, but my first publisher doesn't exist anymore. So I'm going to say this. When I was finding publishers, I'll be honest, Rabbit in Red was a journey. I got rejected by agents. I got rejected by publishers. I kept revising, reworking. The first time you go through this, it's a lot. But as long as you I like the idea. Denzel Washington does it in a commencement speech, but he says, "Fall forward." So we gotta, if I get rejected, I learn something from that, and I
Right.
try to make it better next time, and then send it out. So by the time I got a publisher, I was so excited that someone had offered a contract that, well, just between you and me and all your listeners, I was willing to fib a little here and there. The publisher was a series only publisher. And so
Oh,
the
okay.
when they wanted the book, part of it was tell us about your series. I outlined 4 books in 24 hours, and
Wow.
then got on the phone with the publisher and said, "Here's what I think about book 2 and book 3 and book 4." None of that actually happened. All of the ideas that I sort of came up with overnight, none actually happened. But then I had to write 2 more books. I had to at least write
Right.
the trilogy, right? And I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. So book 1 to me is very kind of fun, friendly YA horror, and I just made it a challenge to myself. Book 2, I'm going dark. Let's go as dark as we can. Let's scare the crap out of people if
Nice,
I
nice.
can. So that was sort of my hope is can I, because a lot of people read book 1 like, this is so fun, but it's not really scary. There's some moments, right? But
Right.
it's just fun. And so I was like, all right, challenge accepted. Let's see what I can do for book 2. And that's really what I tried to do. So yeah, that wasn't actually planned as a series, so much as it was that's what I wanted to do to get published. So that's what I had to do.
That's great.
For Unveiling Aiden for Singlets and Secrets, this was I started working on this. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think if I must have already started it during the pandemic or something, but I just initially went into it. It's gonna be 1 book, and then as I was getting to the end, it's either gonna be 1 book or it's gonna be the whole high school series. And so I wasn't really, like 1 book for freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and
Mhm.
so on. And I thought I really liked that concept, and so I
That's
tried to
fantastic.
play with what we're gonna do from there. And yeah, as I'm almost done with book 3. I'm actually writing the 3rd right now, and I've got about 10,000, 15,000 words to go, and then it's
Oh,
done.
great.
And I had this ending idea. I don't know. I shouldn't spoil too much. I know, but it's like
Don't spoil too
what.
much.
But I want to be like where the main character kind of does something where he's like, this is my story. My story might have a conclusion, so to speak, but there's so many other issues and stories that I've set up in the Unveiling Aiden universe that book 3 might be the end of Unveiling Aiden. And my agent actually asked if we're going to do um, more because I don't think I can tell you why yet because I haven't signed the paper. But we got good
Okay.
news coming. We got really exciting news in the series coming. I just haven't signed the dotted lines yet, but
Okay.
a nice deal for something that I'm not allowed to talk about yet.
Oh, well, that's exciting. Very
But she
exciting.
asked, "Are you going to do a 4th?" Because now we got this deal for the first 3. Like, and I'm like, "Oh gosh, well, I guess maybe I'll have to, won't I?" But I want book 4 to open it up to the other characters. So I try to
Okay.
write very specifically first person in Aiden's point of view, and I just have so we'll see in a couple years where this goes. Like, as I really want to tell the story of some other characters in there, and so maybe those will become their own little series.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I really love that. It's funny. I'm looking at I love looking at people's bookcases, and you've made that very, very easy for me to do today. I see Stephen King back there, but then I also see Creep Show. Oh,
So
you do love 80s horror, don't you?
this is my entire Stephen King library. I have
Wow. Oh, that's
every book
fantastic.
over there, and then not
Wow.
all. I've got more
Okay.
collectibles, but I used to collect so many different things, so like Funkos and stuff like that. But yeah,
What's
that was
the
my
Funko Pop in the corner there?
this one.
Yeah.
This is actually Stephen King. So
Oh,
it's
oh,
a Stephen King
nice. Oh,
Funko.
that's
Yeah, let me grab.
awesome.
Um, I got
The people who
Pennywise
are
hanging out on
listening to the
top, but
show are
yeah.
kind of
So
screwed right now. Sorry about that, but he's
yeah,
holding up an
sorry.
awesome Stevie. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
Pennywise.
and of course Pennywise. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well,
Uh,
fantastic.
Yeah, so and but I try to surround myself. This is where I write. This is where I do these things. So I try to surround myself with the things that inspire me. I got my Quantum Leap Blu-ray right back there.
Oh,
Isn't
get
that?
out of here. That's fantastic.
I just that's why I was like, I saw. By the way, if you don't know, Buddy Pop.
Yeah,
And there's
gotta
an
pop. But
episode.
you're very, very close. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, but anyway, there was an episode titled "Quantum Leap" and Alanis Morissette, and I went to see Alanis when she did the 20 I think it was like the 25th anniversary
Oh,
of
really?
her
Yeah.
first album, the
Jagged Little
Jagged Little
Pill.
Pill.
Yeah.
So and Garbage opened for them,
Oh,
and
nice.
I mean, I talk about reliving your 90s. It was so
Wow.
anyway. So I have some of my favorite albums
Oh, that's
and
really
all that
cool.
sort of stuff, But
Very
yeah.
cool. I was going to ask you earlier, maybe if you had influences as a writer, and I would guess Stephen King may have been one early on that maybe made you want to try writing.
Yeah, I mean, I know that's probably cliche to
Yes,
have Stephen King
like
as your
the most
favorite.
successful author of all time, or one of them.
Yeah, I mean, so when I was, I think, 14 or 15, I picked up my first book. It was actually, I want to say it was Insomnia was the first one I read, which is just fine, but not definitely not one of my favorites. But I loved it so much, I convinced my parents to subscribe me to the Stephen King library. So I got a new hardcover mailed every month, and I look
Oh,
forward to
that's
that so
great.
much as a kid. And I would read one every single month, and I think I fell in love with it because until then, reading was fine. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it. I love a lot of classics. But you know what? There's no classic that I'm up in bed reading at 2:30 in the morning that just I
Right.
can't put down.
Yeah.
He made me, especially when I was younger, scared. And I just had to know what was going to happen next. And like, what is going on? And so, like, I skipped so many school days as a teenager. I love telling my kids, my students this because I'm a teacher now. But I was like, y'all, you know what? Why I skipped school? Here's the mega nerd. I skipped school to finish the book that I was reading the night before. Like, I just stayed up all night.
That's
And then
awesome.
I could faked a stomach ache in the morning, and my mom would let me stay home, and then I slept all day. And I probably did that at least once a month. So yeah.
That's great. It's wonderful how we can connect with authors. One of my best friends actually, she used to always take off a day from work when his new books came out because she wanted to be there, on the first day that it was published and way
Oh,
before the days you could pre-order and things like that.
I same though. I still go to I have a lot of local bookstores that I love. So I love you all if you're listening. But yes, I still try to go. I just had a tradition ever since I was a kid, and I go to Barnes& and Noble on the Tuesday of his new release, and I pick it up in the morning I try to pick it up sometime during the day, over lunch or whatever, and just it's just a tradition. I have to have it on the day of the release, and
That's
it's
fantastic.
nice. Yeah.
And one thing I love about your writing and what you've done so far is the fact that you have kind of hopped between genres there. Obviously your first ones were horror, and what you're doing now is not horror, more
No.
like
I
YA.
joke it could be scary in terms of the writing, but no.
But it's what I like about that is so many writers get advice that says don't do that. Don't switch between genres because you're going to like upset your fans. And I've never quite bought into that because I think if you're getting a good story, you don't care if it's a horror, you don't care if it's a
Mm.
coming of age, you don't care if it's something else. You want to be entertained. We don't just watch one kind of TV show or movie. I think readers like to read different kinds of books. Some obviously favor different genres over others, but getting a good story is the main important thing there, I think.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Just as a consumer of entertainment, I like so many different things. And I could talk to you just as much about Bridgerton as I could Rocky. All right. You know what I like? I mean, I love so many different things, and I appreciate that. And I'm someone who loves to celebrate the things that we love. I never want to yuck someone's yum, so to speak.
Oh,
I
that's
just, if you
nice.
enjoy it, I want to, that's cool. That's the way I am in the classroom. Someone starts insulting, like, you're gonna start insulting Beyonce around me, I'm gonna throw you off a cliff, that sort of thing. So don't you do it. You don't have to like what we like, but I think it's
Right.
cool to respect other people's passions. And so that's the thing that I push. And
Exactly.
then in the same light, it's like, wait a minute, I have an idea for this, and I have an idea for that, an idea for this type of story. You just got to write what you want to read. You got to
Yeah.
write the story you want to read.
Yeah.
And there
I
are
love
no
that.
rules for that. Maybe you won't get published. Maybe it won't be a bestseller. But are you in this for what are you in this for, as a writer, that sort of thing. And,
Right.
my writing routine, the biggest thing I noticed, I had a meeting with a former student who wanted to get together and ask a bunch of questions and kind of ask that general writer's block. What do you do about writer's block and that sort of thing? And I was like, I don't think I ever really have had writer's block.
Hmm.
But I do have emotional blocks. Like if I'm not feeling joy, if I am down, if I'm feeling doom and gloom, my motivation to write suffers, and so I choose not to. Like I don't want my creative work to happen when I'm not not in a right place. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
No, I
like,
totally get that.
yeah. And so as long as whatever I'm doing brings joy or feel like it's creating joy, then I say write whatever you want to write. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think you do need to do that. I mean, I know that there's, different rules. Different rules might be beneficial to different people, but I am very much of the same mindset as you. And I love what you said a couple minutes ago too about, you know, writing the kinds of things that you want to read. I know that for me, one of my favorite genres, probably my most favorite, is mysteries. I enjoy like
Mm.
PI stories, detective stories. I also like them though with a good amount of humor in them. but not to the point where they're ridiculous. You know, I don't want something that's a little too silly because sometimes, while that can be fine under certain circumstances, sometimes it gets too silly to the point of, you know, okay, I can't believe any of what I'm reading. So I started writing a murder mystery recently, just in the past month or so, and I'm trying to do that myself. And, you know, who knows if anyone else will ever laugh at the things that I think are funny, but I'm there typing and I'm laughing and I'm enjoying it. And I think you nailed it. You know, you have to enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's it. If you're getting that emotion, then the hope is, of course, the reader's getting it too. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And you know, I don't want to make it too, you know, writer centric here, you know, because I know a lot of readers are watching and listening to this too. But one thing I'm curious about, just from a writing perspective, is do you go into your books with an outline, or do you just kind of go by the seat of your pants? It's called pantsing to a lot of people who don't know.
Pantsing. I thank you for defining. You know, was so embarrassed. It's a word that stuck in my head because I got asked if I'm a pantser,
Hmm.
the at a writing thing. I don't know, months ago, but I was like, what? What do you call? I always
I know.
feel
What
like,
is
what?
that about?
Like, yeah, I just got hired to teach this graduate level writing class. I don't know what this means, so I felt embarrassed. But yeah, so thank you for defining it. I am somewhere in between, a
Hmm.
hybrid, if you will. Yes, I start with a very loose outline of a three-act structure, not chapter by
Okay.
chapter, but just sort of intro, middle, conclusion, or what's my, so I want to know, at least write down who my characters are, and I try to give them, what do they want, what do they desire, because
Hmm.
everyone's got to have a desire, and what are their
Right.
conflicts and what are their obstacles. So right away I'm always trying to think about desire and
Oh, I like
conflict.
that.
So I go through my characters and I kind of give everybody, he wants this, she wants this, but this is what's stopping them, or this is what the conflict is, and this is what's in the way. And then I try to come up with a three-act structure where there's, or I like how R.L. Stein says it, beginning, middle, the twist. That's
Ah,
my
I love
favorite part.
that. Yes.
Yes. So I always think that's how I write. That's how I outline, very loosely. And then I'll go chapter by chapter. And every few chapters, I'll go back to my outline and I'll revise it because, of course, things have happened, things have changed, and I
Yeah, things
want to
are
go with the
popping up
flow.
that you didn't even imagine at all when you started.
You know this being a writer, but my theory has always been sitting and thinking is an okay level of for thought, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's okay, but once you start writing, your cognitive abilities heighten. You are triggering and stimulating aspects of your brain and coming up with ideas that you never would have come up with if you just sat and thought about them. So
Right.
even the
Absolutely.
act of writing is stimulating, and I think you have to go with it. You have to go with the flow. You have to be willing to revise. I love it when I get surprised. Rabbit and Red's first ending, that outline was so different than how it actually turned out. Neil, oh, me and my memory and names right now. Anyway,
Neil
but there's a
Gaiman.
great, yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
He wrote something I like a lot. He's like, the secret to writing a book is to, number one, write the book. Then number two, go back and edit it as if you planned for all of this to happen in the first place.
I
And so
love
you kind
that.
of go back and like, yes, this was all intentional. I knew exactly where I was going there in the third act, and I got to plug a few things here in the first act to set it up right. So when you go back, you make it work.
That's fantastic. And yeah, if you're a writer or an aspiring writer watching or listening to this, Neil Gaiman is someone to seek out for. He's got so much
Thank
good
you.
writing advice out there. He's
Yeah, he's
fantastic.
fantastic. One worth following, inspiring and funny and talented. So just
Yes.
hits all the boxes.
Absolutely. And I did want to just go back to your new book that's coming out. Now, I don't think we mentioned, well, you did mention when it's coming out because it's coming out 2 weeks from today on August 27th. Is that right?
Yes,
That is
it is.
fantastic.
It is up. The pre-order links are up on all the major retailer sites as of this morning. So it's exciting to see that that's up and going. And yeah, the prep for a new release. I mean, appreciate the opportunity to share the story on this podcast. Marketing. You have to be just about as creative in how you market and present your material as you have to write it in the first place. So there's a lot of work to do over the next couple of weeks because again, it's one of those things like how many households know what singlets and secrets is?
Right.
What's my marketing budget? How do I get that out there? And so it's a difficult journey in and of itself. But I'm primarily a word of mouth author. The Cobra Kai review happened because I fought for that. It just
Yeah,
didn't happen
which is
by
great.
magic, you know what I mean? And so I appreciate every single person who might read the book and just tell someone else, this is something I think you might like, or you might be surprised by this. That helps tremendously for any author, but especially authors that don't have the Stephen King household name.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And, let's make sure people know that name then. The first book was Singlets and Secrets. I'll say it again, Singlets and Secrets, that came out last August. And the new one is Pride and Persistence. Again,
Yes.
Pride and Persistence, which
So I
we,
got like an alliteration route. Singlet, by the way, it's funny to me. Just again, I have a karate and maybe some MMA background type of stuff. So a singlet is just a wrestling uniform, which kind
oh,
of
okay. I was going to
indicates,
ask you
yeah.
that. I wasn't sure
So I
what it
get a lot of
was.
questions from people, and again, we all have blind spots, right? It's like, oh yeah, that's jargon that's very specific
Right.
to the thing that I know about, but not everyone knows what a singlet is.
It's
And
like me mentioning pantsers earlier, right? So if you're not in the world,
exactly.
you're like, what?
So yeah, singlets and yeah, I have some fun with the singlets in that first book. And then yeah, pride and persistence for the second one. And really the two words sum it up. I have a story about persistence I love to tell, but it takes a little bit of time. The main thing is that I just think that I'm a fall 7, rise 8 person. That's a Japanese proverb that I mention a lot in the book, but it's just this idea that it's a metaphor for what the LGBTQ community is experiencing, but also anybody who's just fighting for whatever your goals in life are. You can't give up, and I don't mean don't give up in terms like if someone's saying no in a relationship, don't be creepy and persist in that
No, of
way.
course
But I
not.
mean, learn new ways to present yourself to become the version of who you see, the version of yourself that you see being successful. And I think if so, I don't know. I hope there's a metaphor in that book about just getting up, no matter how many times we fall down, we will get back up and we will keep moving forward.
I love that. I love that. And several minutes ago, you had mentioned being a fan of the Rocky movies too. And what you just said there very much makes me think of that. I am that is my favorite. People have the Lord of the Rings as their favorite series. They have Star Wars as their favorite series. The Rocky movies are my all-time favorite movie series, and that's one of the parts I love about it is that just to keep going, keep moving forward, and go for what you love and what you want to do.
Oh, buddy, I usually memorize the Life Ain't All Sunshine and Rainbow speech and do it in my classes just to kind of fire them up. It ain't about how hard you can hit, it's about how hard you can get hit.
Yeah,
And then
and can you?
all right, well,
Yeah,
I'm
keep
a little
moving
rusty.
forward.
Exactly. And so like, but those are the inspirations that I'm drawn to for the same reason and trying to take my own spin on that for particularly for my community. But just I think we all are drawn to that because life is hard. Let's face it, life is hard. Sometimes just facing the future is overwhelming, and to have this idea that you're not alone, that frustration is going to come and go, but you are not alone and you can get up and keep moving forward no matter where you're at. And I
Oh,
don't know. I have a quote. It's actually one of my favorites right here. This is, Mitch Albom, Tuesdays with Maury.
oh yes, yes.
This is an older book. I mean, this came out in 99. But I read this and taught it to my first year high school student classes. And there's a great long story involved. Long story short, we got Mitch Albom to come visit our high school classroom.
Oh wow.
How I can kind of be persistent, let me just tell you
Well,
that.
that's wonderful.
And he wrote on the inside, I keep this by me for when I'm down. All right. But he wrote, well, you're not gonna be able to see it very well on camera, but it says to
Let's see if I can
Joe,
get there.
persistence pays off. That's the first part. That's kind of where the title
Oh,
even
that's
came from. I
fantastic.
love it. So this has always stuck with me. And then I think he says, persistence pays off. Thanks for being a big man and a great teacher. You honor Maury's legacy. That's from 2003. But I keep it up on
Wow.
my bookshelf
Oh, Joe, that's
because the
fantastic.
story, like, yeah, he
Yeah.
came, he did it all. He hung out. I got to pick him up in from a private jet, and we took him out to breakfast one morning. He hung out with all of my English classes all day long and told us
Wow.
his story. He did an all school assembly for the entire school and community, and then signed a bunch of books. And it all happened through this crazy dramatic letter writing story where my students and I just decided we had some things to say, and we wanted to make sure that he heard them. And surprisingly, he did. And yeah, it's kind of a
Well,
fun thing.
it sounds absolutely fantastic, and persistence does pay off. That in so many different ways. Sometimes you might have to push harder than some people might like. Sometimes, like you made a joke about, what maybe being annoying to some, and but really, go for what you want. I mean, that's so awesome that you were persistent there, and you got Mitch to come to your classroom.
Yeah, sort of my writing advice, life advice that kind of ties together is it's patience and persistence too.
Yeah.
Like you said, you can't. I'm not going to email Mitch Albom every single day. I'm not going to email John Horowitz every single day to ask for a blurb. But I'm going to be strategic. I'm going to be patient. I'm going to be professional. Got a lot of P's, I guess, and I'll be persistent all at the same time. So yeah, like with John, the story was I once a month or so and maybe tagged him or reached out very lightly. And I've done a lot of things like that in my professional career where I just try to network patiently, professionally, but persistently when there's something I think that is important to what I'm doing.
Well, that is fantastic. I
Yeah.
love that. That's a great thing for people to embrace and try to do themselves because why not, folks? Life is short. Go for those things that you want.
You
Push a
don't know
little
unless
harder
you
than maybe
ask,
you
right?
think you have inside of you. I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, you just don't know until you ask, right? So, like,
Exactly.
believe me, my next book, this will be the impossible challenge, but my dream would be to get a blurb from Stephen King. And I've got a new horror novel dropping next year, Darkness Calls, and that
I
comes
was
out in
going to ask you
February.
about that. I had seen that on your site. That's so cool.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. I actually wrote that before Singlets and Secrets. This is the publishing industry for you, I suppose. For whatever reason, we went through. They published these other books first, and we're doing Darkness Calls next year. And yeah, this is my darkest horror story yet. It is still. I still think it's fun, of course, at times, but it's going to be a lot deeper and a lot darker. So I hope people will enjoy it. But yeah, it's a totally different version. You read Singlets and Secrets, you get to the end. I hope you're scream, crying, and joy and hope. You get to the end of Darkness Calls, you're going to be mad at me, and for other reasons. So it's going to be exciting. We'll see
Well,
what
I'm
happens.
intrigued about that one as well, and I am looking forward to reading you.
Oh,
I had bought. Oh, of course, now it's not going to show
yay!
up, but
I saw the cover. I
yeah,
saw it.
you
I think
saw it.
there it
Singlets
is.
and Secrets, folks. I got it on my Kindle. I got it last week. I had hoped to read it before our show, but life, life happened.
Sure, it's a
Hey,
beautiful cover.
it's a very beautiful cover.
And yeah, the second one's just as gorgeous, but I think it's bookshelf worthy, and that's what I hope is that people, number one, I mean. There's a lot of books to compete with, so you definitely want to have something that's bookshelf worthy. But number two, I just think my goal, isn't just to reach young adults. I hope parents read this. I hope lots of adults read this because there is a character in it for everyone. It is meant to be a model of how to be a good mom if your son comes out, that sort of thing. Aiden's mom in this story is phenomenal, and the teacher who helps Aiden is phenomenal. So we have a lot of great characters to look up to. But my theory has always been like, I just think if you're an adult or if you're someone, maybe you don't have the time, the resources, the opportunity to get on a podcast and tell people about how you feel about the state of the world. So let them see how you feel.
Yeah.
Show people that you're reading stories like this. Open this book up around your kids, and your kids will know they can come talk to you. I've got a family member. Hey, if you want people to say nice things, don't do crappy things. But we've got a family member who's constantly posting anti-trans stuff on his socials, and it just drives me up a wall.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And I think to myself, this person has children, multiple children, and I think you don't. If your
Yeah.
kid has something that they're going to struggle to talk to you about, they're not coming to you. You've
Yeah.
made it blatantly aware what's going on in your heart, and I think that person, people like that, just need a little patience themselves
Yes.
and
Exactly.
patience and understanding. Don't we don't have to jump to a conclusion on every single topic immediately. Why not just allow ourselves to think and talk and reflect on it? And if you read books like this and show your kids and show others that, because I mean, anybody reading this in public, it's blatantly gay, right? That's what I love about the cover so much. Because my first couple of designs the publisher sent, that was my funny feedback, is he sent a really cool cover. And I just said, his name's Casey, he's an amazing designer. And I just said, Casey, you got to gay this up for me. Because I want it obvious. And for some reason, I don't want them necessarily getting the book that they wouldn't want to read either. So
Right. Of
let's make it
course.
as
Yeah.
obvious as possible so
Yeah.
that you know what you're getting into. But again, I just think there is power in being an adult and having things like this around your home so your kids' friends see that you're cool and you're open-minded, and that means that they know they can come talk to you. That's
That's
important.
very important because how many kids go through all kinds of struggles because they don't have someone to talk to. I mean, it can just get so it can go to the absolute worst places, if they don't
Yeah.
have someone to talk
I
to.
mean, before again, I relate to so many things that you might read about with Aiden's story and Singlets, but it's like my dad called me the F word when I was a kid before
Oh
I came
wow.
out. So again, people knew who I was apparently before I could communicate who I was, but that was his reaction to me.
Right.
I wanted to get my ear pierced. He had a word for it. My mom made the appointment, took me and said, you tell me anything you want anytime. Who do you think I came out to first? Who do you think I talked to first? It was definitely the one not calling me names. And if
Right,
he were alive
right.
today, he'd probably be the one posting and ranting about terrible things on socials. And it's just like, we can be better than that.
Yeah, we can, and
Yeah.
I think too that like you had said, you want you people should strive to be open minded, but they should also strive to be willing to change their mindset on things too. Because you might have heard something when you were a kid, that maybe that were like gay jokes that their fathers or uncles said around them. That doesn't mean you have to hold on to it 30 years later. Open your mind, open up, look around you, see people you love,
Yes.
see people who are struggling with things, and realize we are all in this. I don't want to sound all preachy, but we're all in this together. I mean, so let's, try to respect each other.
My tagline for book two is what are we fighting for if not each other? And
I love that.
that's what I'm trying. Yeah, exactly. And I love your attitude on this. It really is just so important to try to be, I wouldn't want to think the same way forever about every single idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Allow yourself to grow and allow yourself to become a better version of yourself. Look, as a queer man, will admit, and I will tell you this. I have no doubt that society has programmed internalized homophobia and transphobia into me, and I had to fight that myself. I think as a young
Mhm.
gay man, for example, I initially did resist drag. I may have even said some things like, "Oh, I don't want to look at that" or whatever. And again, it's fine if it's not for you, but
Right.
in
Sure.
terms of like entertainment or anything like that. But, I once I decided to get over that and just kind of watch it for what it is and see people who, oh my gosh, the stories about how many times drag has saved someone's life because they've
Hmm.
been able to finally express themselves in an artistic and creative way that matches the version of themselves that they see inside their heads. When I look at it through that lens, as opposed to just people lip syncing or something, it changes everything. And
Yeah.
but I've had to fight that inside of me. And I mean, if a queer man has to fight his own societal programmed homophobia and transphobia, because I mean, I think that's why we hated ourselves for so long. I
Right.
didn't want to come out because I hated myself. I had to first unlearn and relearn that. So yes, it's about, anyway, the teacher mode. I'm getting the teacher mode, unlearning, relearning, and just
Well,
being
it's easy to
open-minded.
start going down. I was just doing it myself. You get
Yeah.
passionate about things, and yeah, it's important to keep growing. You
Yes.
know.
And that's what I love about good stories and good entertainment. It doesn't matter how you consume them to me, but it's just, I love things that'll challenge me and inspire me. And whether it's Quantum Leap or, Singlets and Secrets. So,
And I think that's what we all need is
um,
things that are going to inspire us and challenge us and things to feel passionate about. That's why, I think, even 30 years from now, I'm still going to have things that I am passionate about, whether it's, rewatching Quantum Leap for the 40th time or, just feeling a passion and connection with something. And Joe, I had so much fun talking with you in
oh,
this
me
show
too.
today. I
You
thank you
you
so
come up with
much.
some good pop culture topics for your other show, and you know who I am now. So you let me
Yes,
know what you'd like to
absolutely. And we
talk
might have to
about, and
talk
I'll
about the
pop
Rocky
in.
movies.
Oh, if I could. My students know that if they bring up Rocky in class, that we get off topic for 10 minutes. So I that is the number one movie they'll ask me about because I could. There's so many. Yeah, hundreds of stories that are fun to share about those movies. So
Oh, that is awesome. That is
yeah.
awesome. And folks, again, I want you to check out Joe's books. The new one comes out 2 weeks today on August 27th. You might want to first read Singlets and Secrets, which was published last year, but it is out there everywhere. And speaking of things that are out there, where can people find you online, Joe?
So if I am most active on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, of all things. I'm trying on the TikTok. It's been a little harder for me,
I
but
just signed up. I'm struggling with that so
nice.
far, but
That's the time, first of all, and then I don't know, editing. And then the other day I
sure.
was like, I swear they're making these apps specifically for young people because my thumbs don't want to edit these darn videos. Anyway, yeah, so I try
So
to be pretty
TikTok,
active. Yeah.
Instagram.
And yeah, so Joe Chianakas, just look me up by my name. I know the last name's hard to spell, but Chianakas. My website is singletsandsecrets.com will take you right to it, as well as joeshianakas.com will take you right to it. And I have, I'm lucky that the books are pretty much, I think, everywhere from Amazon to bookshop.org. The best thing, though, that a reader could do is just call your local bookstore. That's what I would really
Mhm.
ask. Call your favorite local bookstore, particularly if you have an indie bookstore. They can order. I mean, anybody can order these books. So just say, "Hey, I've heard there's Singlets and Secrets and a new book coming out called Pride and Persistence. Can you order that for me?" And then they get part of the profit, and you're not only supporting me, you're supporting your local bookstore. I'd rather you do that than anything else.
Yeah, that's wonderful because we want to keep those bookstores, especially the indie ones going because sometimes, that's not the easiest thing for them.
Yeah,
So
for
anyway,
sure.
I thank you again, Joe, and I thank everyone for being a part of the show. If we had mentioned my other podcast a few times, probably more than a few times, but it's called Gotta Pop. So if you're a
Gotta
fan
pop.
of pop culture, I hope you'll check that out. And there will be more episodes of Buddies Book Buddies coming up soon. So I thank you for being a part of the show. And Joe, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. Just a quick PS here. During the show, Joe and I were talking about his Rabbit in Red book series, and he had mentioned that the title of that series was inspired by a small part of a classic horror film from 1978. And we kind of teased around what it was, and we said we would mention what it was at the end of the episode, but we forgot to do that. So I just wanted to tell you that that classic horror film, one of the greatest horror films of all time, was Halloween. So I thank you again for being a part of the Buddies Book Buddies podcast, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Enjoy. Now I got to find that stop button. There it is. See ya.